going to begin our look at factorizing expressions by taking some examples from exercise 4.5 in your textbook. So these are the examples here, questions 1 to 20 in exercise 4.5. Let's begin with the first one then. Question 1, x squared plus 6x. So we'll begin by writing down our expression, x squared plus 6x. Now the first question I'm going to ask myself is what numbers exist in front of the letters, and is there a common factor for them? So in front of the x squared we've got a hidden 1. I'll just put it in so we can see it's there, and we have a 6 in front of the x. So we'll take these numbers down on their own here, and we'll ask ourselves, is there a common factor to 1 and 6? And the answer is the only common factor is 1. So 1 goes into 1 one time, 1 goes into 6 times, a bit trivial, but nonetheless we have got a common factor of 1. Now let's just take the letters. We'll change color here, and we'll take the x squared and the x, and we'll take these out on their own over here, x squared and the x. Is there a common factor for x squared and x? Well, the answer is yes. X will go into x squared and x will go into x squared x times, and x will go into x 1. So our common factor we're pulling out here is the x. So now we can start to write our solution. We'll put down our brackets, and we're going to take this number here and multiply it by that number there. 1 times x is x, so I'm pulling out x out of these two terms inside the brackets. And we're left with 1 for the first term multiplied by an x to give me x, and for the second term I've got 6 times 1, so I've got a plus 6. A bit trivial in terms of the difficulty, degree of difficulty, but the process is what's important. There's my solution, x into x plus 6. I can always check my answer by multiplying out or expanding out the brackets again. So x times x will give me x squared, and x times 6 will give me 6x. So I end up with the same expression that I started with to know my answer really is good. Well, that takes care of the question 1, x squared plus 6x. Let's have a look at question 2, 2x squared plus 6x. So here it is already written up for us. We're going to again now consider the numbers in front of the letters first of all, the coefficients here. And we're going to take that 2 out on its own, and the 6 on its own, and ask ourselves if there's any common factor for 2 and 6. Well, again, I think you'll agree that 2 will go into 2 and 2 will go into 6. 2 will go into 2 once and into 6 3 times. Okay, so we're going to remember those numbers for later on. But a common factor then is 2 coming out. Now we'll take the x squared and the 6x on their own. We'll just change the color to make it obvious what we're doing here. We're going to take the x squared over here, and we'll take the x next to it, and ask ourselves again, is there any common factor for x squared and x? And like last example, x is a common factor. X into x squared x times, x into x once, and I'm going to remember those two numbers, but again a common factor here is x. So now let's draw up our solution. We'll put down our brackets. We're taking the 2 and we're multiplying it by the x to get outside the brackets 2x. The first term inside the bracket is going to be this 1 multiplied by this x, which will just give us x, and then this 3 multiplied by this 1 will give us the 3. Of course there's a plus inside, so we'll put a plus there. So our solution is 2x into x plus 3. Well, that wasn't so bad. So let's try something a little bit more challenging. We'll go for question 16. This introduces an extra letter, y in this case. 15xy, or x times y, minus 9 times x squared y. So let's try that one. Same technique as before. We'll consider the numbers, the coefficients in front of the letters first of all. So we'll take the 15 and bring it down on its own here, and the 9 similarly, and ask ourselves if there's any common factor for 15 and 9. Well, I think 3 will go into 15 and go into 9. So we'll end up with 3 5s are 15, 3 into 15 gives us 5, and 3 into 9 will give us 3. We'll remember those numbers for later, but here's our first factor we've pulled out. Now we'll consider the x's. Let's just change the color so we can pick these up. We'll consider the x and the x squared. We'll pull the x over here on its own and the x squared over here. So is there any common factor for x and x squared? Well, I think we've already seen there is. X will go into x and x squared. X into x goes once, and x into x squared goes x times. Again, we'll remember those for later, but here's a factor we've pulled out, x. Now we'll consider the y terms. We'll just change this to blue. I've got a y there and a y there. So I'm going to pull these over here on their own. Y and y. Is there any common factor for y? Well, I think we'll agree again that y will go into y. Y will go into y once, and y goes into y once. So we end up with that. So our common factor here is the y. So now I think we can draw up our solution. Let's change our color back to black here, and we'll put our bracket down. And outside the bracket, we're going to have 3 multiplied by the x multiplied by the y. So we end up with 3xy. Now inside the bracket, we're going to have 3 terms to deal with here. So let's just take the 5 multiplied by the 1 multiplied by the 1. 5 times 1 times 1 is 5. We'll try a different color again. Then the next term we're going to have inside the bracket is going to be 3 times x times 1. 3 times 1 is 3, times x is 3x. And of course I have got a minus sign in there. So there's our solution. 3xy into 5 minus 3x. Again, multiply out to double check your answer. Let's look then at question number 20. 12pq cubed minus 12pq squared plus 15pq. And we'll try the same technique we've tried before. We're going to look at the numbers, the coefficients in front of the letters first. So we'll take the 12 on its own there, and another 12, and a 15. And we'll ask ourselves what is a factor, the highest factor that will go into each of these. And I think very quickly we'll see that 3 will go into all of these, the highest factor. 3 into 12 goes 4 times. 3 into 12 4 times, 3 into 15 5 times. Now remember, this is the factor that we're pulling out. Now let's take the p's here, each of these in front of the q's, and we'll pull those out. We've got p, p, and p, and of course the common factor here is p, which will give us 1, 1, and 1. Basically we're saying p goes into p once. And last but not least, let's take the q's. We've got q cubed, q squared, and q. Write those up. Q cubed, q squared, and q. And what is the common factor there? Well, I think you'll see very quickly q is the common factor. Q is into q cubed, q squared times. Q goes into q squared q times, q goes into q once. So these are the factors that we're going to end up with. We're going to pull out the q here, and we're going to pull out the p here. And these numbers at the bottom, of course, we're going to reference as well. So what are we pulling out altogether? Well, let's write our solution up then. We're going to put down our brackets like this, and we're pulling out 3 multiplied by p multiplied by q, 3pq. And inside, we'll take the 4 multiplied by the 1 multiplied by the q squared, so we get 4q squared. Then we'll take this 4 and multiply it by this 1 here and this q here. So we'll end up with a negative, because it's negative above, 4q. And last but not least, we'll take our 5 multiplied by the 1 multiplied by the 1 and end up with a plus 5. And there is our solution.